Premier League betting edge.
This is simply stunning. Oh, it's another blessing. Oh, yes. Top quality. Man of the moment. On the biggest stage, he is the master performer. Oh, indeed.
All right, you got Premier League betting edge, and it's match week 2. And well, I'm glad match week 1's over. That's about all I got to say. Riley, any thoughts on match week 1? I know you wrote a really good report on it for the newsletter. I thought that was very well written.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, not much to say at this point. I mean, it's pretty frustrating, but honestly, learn from our mistakes is probably the best thing that we can do. Obviously, I went over it in the newsletter, so for those who haven't seen that, I definitely recommend go read that. I'll probably be doing that every week for all the plays, just to kind of, give a brief little overview of every play that we made, the reasoning behind it, all that stuff. And obviously the result as well. So, last weekend wasn't so great. Probably the worst possible start we could have had to the season. Being honest, I mean, 0-6, it can't really get much worse than that. But coming into this match week, I think we've got a lot of value coming in here and 2 nice plays for you guys. So pretty excited to, brush off last weekend and get right into match week number 2 here.
Yeah, well, we got 37 weeks left, so that's good. And I love these match week 2 plays. They look really good. And we're going to start it off. It's Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern, Aston Villa and Bournemouth. And we're going to go with a total in this game. Riley, describe what we're going to do here.
Well, looking at the chart here, you can obviously see we have a bunch of value on the Bournemouth and the money line. One reason I'm kind of straying away from that one is Aston Villa, one of those relegated or rather recently promoted sides. Coming in with a bit uncertainty still with their, we don't have much data on them. So we're kind of assuming a little bit more with their team quality at the moment compared to the other 17 Premier League sides who have a whole season's data, or we have a full season's worth of data with. So I'm going to stay away from that one a little bit and kind of focus more on the individual player quality, which can help us derive our metrics for attack and defense. And looking at the defenses here, we have a 130 for Aston Villa, which is 30% worse than average, and a 114 for Bournemouth, which is 14% worse than average. And I have highlighted a few players for Aston Villa, Jack Grealish, Wesley from the recent big signing from Club Bruges, who have potential to be big attacking threats. So Aston Villa, even though looking at that 69 attacking rating, it's not great, but I think they have a lot more quality than that rating shows. Hence why we're going to go with that over, because both teams here, not the strongest defenses, but they have a decent amount of good attacking players. Obviously, Ryan Fraser, we talked about all last season for Bournemouth, didn't have the greatest.
Ryan Fraser's a personal favorite of yours.
Yeah, he is one of my favorites, one of those underrated non-top 6 attackers who had great output last season. Didn't have the greatest start. Unfortunately, also kind of hurt us as well with that one play on Bournemouth last weekend. But we're going to go with the total. Totals have kind of been our bread and butter last year. I actually have 2 more totals not being showed just for the subscribers as well. So make sure to subscribe to get those totals here. But I think I think this is a really solid play going into this match week. Now looking at their players as well, player strength going into this one, and sorting by defensive rating. 2 keepers, Aaron Ramsdale for Bournemouth, actually had a pretty solid outing the last match against Sheffield despite giving up the late goal. But he's a very young keeper, young and experienced. This is his 2nd Premier League start, so certainly has potential to make a few errors here and there. So we'll have to see if that maybe comes into play a little bit this weekend as well. But overall, the defenses aren't really that outstanding for me. Aston Villa, a few players missing that could potentially be playing. And then at Bournemouth as well, they'll be playing with a 3 in the back, so that could shift things a little bit because I say that as in that's my predicted based off of the first match week. So if they go back to that back 4, it can actually help us a little bit because that reduces 3 center backs to 2. And I think that matches up well with Aston Villa's attack to create some goals here. And of course it is at Aston Villa as well. So I think potentially this is a game where we could see a 2-1, maybe 2-2 result where we have teams basically what will help us the most is if a team scores early here and opens things up. And as you can see there with the 3.26 projected goals, it's one of the highest projected goals totals of the match week, in part due to those relatively below average defenses. So I think the over 2.5 at minus 116, risking 1.16 units to win one makes sense in this situation.
Great. Yeah, it looks good. And I checked the plays last year, and it was the over 2.5 at one point, 14-1 on the over 2.5. So you seem to have a knack for getting those. So that's a great start. Okay, so let's take a look at this Sheffield United Crystal Palace game. This is kind of going to be what we're going to talk about the most in depth. Now, there's 6 plays on the card outside of the 2 that we're going to talk about. But let's talk about this one. Sheffield United, new to the Premier League, they host Crystal Palace, and that is a 9 a.m. EST on Sunday play. And the line is Sheffield United. If you want to take them, you'll get plus 160. Crystal Palace, the underdog here at plus 198, and the draw is plus 226. Riley has something to say about Crystal Palace being the underdog here. Riley.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at the players participating in this one. And I think, in my personal opinion, the squad strength there's a pretty big difference here. And now sorting by overall rating, you can see Crystal Palace actually has 5 of the top players, the top 5 players in a row actually in this match here. And I think I 100% agree with that. I think Crystal Palace's side is much stronger overall when looking at individual player strength. Of course, manager quality also plays into this as well for sure. And I think Sheffield United's, despite the ratings, Roy Hodgson's actually rated higher. I think Sheffield United's manager is actually a bit better here and could prove to be a pretty solid manager over the course of the season. But I think in this scenario, Crystal Palace actually was 6th overall in away points last season in the league, one of the best away teams in the league compared to home performance, actually the best. So their home performance is down, but for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing to point out, and something that is really good about our model in that you can break it down by players. So, I mean, to me, that's a really good point. You've got the top 5 players in the game matching up. They're all on Crystal Palace. I mean,
yeah.
If you're going to bet on Crystal Palace, so that kind of accounts for that 15% edge you're getting with Crystal Palace.
Yeah, and this one is one where I can be a bit more confident in playing. I think Sheffield United outperformed a little bit with that draw, as I kind of graced over with the newsletter regarding Bournemouth's play last weekend. And I think going into this one, they're going to be a little bit overrated. And of course, I also talked about some value teams to look at, and that's kind of the take I want to go into with this week is a lot of these teams. A lot of people are going to be basing team strength off of just one game because they don't have a full season's worth of data like we do to quantify the team strengths here. So I think our predictive value is a lot more than most people have right now. And most people are basing their bets or their, who they're putting money on this weekend based off of just one game or, obviously they don't have the data. So it's going to be a bit more on intuition, which we can take advantage of. And going into this weekend, I think Crystal Palace over the course of last year, data says they were a lot better at away than home. And this is an away match for them. Very, very strong side. Wilfried Zaha, one of the best players outside the top 6. And then also Luka Miljovic was also pretty surprising, strong player from last season for them as well. So very strong side, like I said. Looking at the actual ratings as well quickly. Crystal Palace actually a 92 overall, so 8% worse than average at the moment, and then 75 for Sheffield United. So right now, Crystal Palace 17% better overall than Sheffield United is. So I think it's pretty obvious for me here that there's value, especially with the Crystal Palace being a much stronger away side than home. I think obviously we played against them last week and didn't work out, but I think going into this one we can be pretty confident. And of course we do have the three-headed parlay. Mark, did you want to introduce that as well?
Yeah, and you're not going to get an argument from me for betting on Zaha, because I think Zaha, to me, and I've watched a lot of Crystal Palace. I don't know, I was watching a Crystal Palace game and I really like the way that guy plays. He's very aggressive. He moves. He's very agile in his movement. So you're not going to get an argument from me for playing Zaha for a goal. And I just before the podcast played him to score the goal separately, then the parlay, and I was able to get plus 300 on him, and we have him priced at about plus 150. I think it was 40%. You said. So
yeah, I'm actually highlighting it right now, 40% for Zaha. So I 100% agree there. I think he is, like I said, one of the best players out to the top 6. And obviously, you can see here as well, Milivojevic actually rated above him in expected goals, but a lot of his expected goals are coming from set-piece plays. He is the penalty taker. So Wilfried Zaha is the more likely option from open play, and I think that's important because over the course of the season, like last year, Milivojevic converted a lot of penalties, but that might not be the case this season, where we can rely on these statistics a little bit more when analyzing open play scenarios. So I think Zaha is definitely the option here. Also, this will be his first game back as well. So I really like this play here, and the overall play is actually a Palace win plus over 2.5 and a Zaha goal, and that registers at 11.3%. Mark, what did you end up?
Yeah, I was able to get, and you got to be careful on these parlays because they will juice them probably worse than they if you were to play. Let's say you were to get these games straight. If you played over 2.5 and you played Crystal Palace, but because of they're a sports book and they're trying to make money, you've got to be aware that just playing these blindly probably not a good idea. But in this case, I was able to get 19-1, which is what that's saying is the book saying they have a 5% chance, or this bet has a 5% chance to hit. Now we've costed out against the odds, and we think that this has an 11.3% chance to hit. Doesn't mean you're going to hit it, but you got a 1 in 10 chance of hitting it. The book's saying you only got a 1 in 20 chance of hitting it, so it's a good play from that regard. I really like this. With Zaha, to me, it seems like the way how Zaha ticks is how Crystal Palace ticks, even more so. And it all correlates. If the guy scores a goal, they got a good chance to win and to go over. But I think with Zaha, it's really interesting because if he plays and he scores goals, they win and they go over. So this is one of the plays, in my opinion. I think we got a really good shot at hitting this parlay, very comparatively to the way it's priced, of course. But I don't know. I think that this one might be the one we hit, Riley. I really like it.
Yeah, it would be a nice bounce back for sure from last week. And looking at the projected goals as well from this game, 2.99. So liking the over as well. And then actually Crystal Palace favored by about 0.51 goals here. So overall, there's a reason we're going with the money line. There's a reason we're going with the over. And now you've seen there's a reason we're going with the Zaha goal. So I think overall it calculates in it. We have that calculated edge, as you can see there. We also like the money line here, but I think the plays, I've adjusted them a little bit this weekend, a little less risk overall, but I still think we've had a nice batch of plays. There's going to be 6 overall for the subscribers, a bunch more totals than last weekend, which will be really nice because that, like I said, was kind of our bread and butter last year. So yeah, and then the last thing which I want to quickly grace over is the marquee matchup for this weekend, which is City versus Tottenham. The only really thing I want to point out about this game is if City dominates this game, it'll be great for one of our futures. That City and Liverpool top 2, because if City dominates this game, Tottenham and Arsenal are currently the top 2, outside the top 2. Weird little statement there, but that have a chance at actually challenging City and Liverpool. And if City dominates Tottenham in this game, it's going to be very, very hard for me to see Tottenham and Arsenal, even though Arsenal's not involved, but just in general, the idea of another team challenging those top 2. Obviously, City coming off a big win and Liverpool coming off a big one as well. So that future play looking very, very nice, even though it's only been one match week. And like I said, I don't want to make any judgment calls based off of one match. That's kind of a sin and data analysis. But I think they're looking pretty nice right now just based off the tiniest of tiny sample sizes. So interesting game. Definitely watch that one. If you're going to pick one match to watch this week, watch that one. But nothing for the podcast on that one, though.
All right. Well, so we got, just to recap the podcast plays, we're going to go with Aston Villa and Bournemouth over 2.5. We're going to risk 1.16 units to win 1. We're going to go with Crystal Palace. Wow, that's a big price, plus 198. We're going to risk a half, actually 0.51 units to be exact. And then we are going to do the 3-headed parlay. Crystal Palace over 2.5 and Wilfried Zaha to score. We like that. It's going to pay 19-1 if it hits. And you'll also be able to listen to the British announcer go Zaha if he scores. So with that, for Riley Wickman, it's Base Winner. Hope all your bets cash. You guys have a great EPL and a great sports betting weekend in general. Thanks for listening, guys.